It was a sweltering July afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee, the kind where the heat seemed to press down on you like a heavy blanket. The sun blazed overhead, and the streets were nearly empty, but inside a small, bustling clothing store on Beale Street, something extraordinary was happening. A young man, tall and lanky, with a mop of unruly hair, stood just outside the store, his nose almost pressed against the glass. His eyes were wide with desire, staring at a white tuxedo in the window. It was the kind of tuxedo that made you feel like $1 million, the kind that made people turn their heads and whisper in awe. But for Elvis Presley, it was more than that. It was a symbol of everything he wanted to be, a star. Elvis had been working part-time as an usher at the nearby Lowe's Theater, earning just enough to get by, but not nearly enough to buy that tuxedo. He was poor, but he had dreams, big dreams. He wanted to be a singer, a performer, someone who could make people feel the way he felt when he heard the blues and rock and roll pouring from the jukeboxes in the clubs along Beale Street. Inside the store, Bernard Lansky, the owner, noticed the young man. He had a soft spot for kids with ambition, especially those who reminded him of his own journey from a poor immigrant family to a successful businessman. He beckoned Elvis to come in. Elvis hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He was shy, but he knew he had to take a chance. He stepped into the store, feeling the cool air on his skin, and looked up at Mr. Lansky. "Hey there, son," Mr. Lansky said with a warm smile. "What can I do for you?" Elvis's voice was barely above a whisper. I want to buy that tuxedo in the window, but I don't have enough money." Mr. Lansky studied the young man for a moment, seeing the determination in his eyes. "You know what, son, I believe in you. I'll let you buy it on an installment plan. You can pay me back when you get rich." Elvis's face lit up with a grin. "Thank you, Mr. Lansky. I promise I'll pay you back. I'm going to be a star." Mr. Lansky chuckled. "Well, you've got the chutzpah, that's for sure. Let's go pick out that tuxedo." And so, the beginning of a beautiful friendship was formed. A friendship that would not only change Elvis's life, but also put Lansky's on the map. Elvis started coming to the store every day, looking in the window, and eventually, he started buying more and more clothes. He bought bolero jackets, pink shirts, and even a pair of pants for $3.95. As Elvis's success grew, so did his bills at Lansky's. He started buying more extravagant outfits, like a pink leather overcoat with a mink collar. The store became his go-to place for all his clothing needs, and Mr. Lansky and his son, Hal, were there to make sure he always looked his best, but the journey to stardom wasn't easy. Elvis faced many challenges, from financial struggles to the pressures of fame. Yet he always had the support of the Lanskys, who believed in him from the very beginning. One day, when Elvis was just starting to make a name for himself, he came into the store with a big smile. "Mr. Lansky, I have some good news. I've been asked to perform on the Ed Sullivan Show. I need some new clothes for the gigs." Mr. Lansky's eyes sparkled with pride. "Well, let's find you something special. You're going to be a star, and you need to look the part." Elvis tried on several outfits, and Mr. Lansky made sure every detail was perfect. From the stitching to the fit, everything had to be just right. As Elvis walked out of the store, dressed in a sharp new suit, he felt a surge of confidence. He knew he was on his way. The Lanskys watched as Elvis's career took off, and they were there every step of the way, providing him with the best clothes and the best service. They became more than just a clothing store. They became a part of Elvis's life. And as Elvis's fame spread, so did the reputation of Lansky's. People from all over came to see the store where the king of rock and roll shopped. The Lanskys were proud, but they never forgot the young man who had stood in the window, dreaming of a better life. Elvis Presley had come a long way, and the Lanskys had been there with him every step of the way. The boy in the window had become a legend, and the store on Beale Street had become a piece of history. In 1953, Sun Records was a small studio in Memphis, Tennessee, run by Sam Phillips. It wasn't as fancy as the big record companies like Columbia or RCA, but it had good equipment and was becoming known in the South for its country music. The studio on Union Avenue looked shabby, but it was where some of the greatest music of the time was recorded. One day, a young man named Elvis Presley walked into Sun Records. He wanted to record a song for his mother's birthday. Elvis paid $4 and recorded My Happiness. This was the first time Elvis's name appeared on a record, even though it was just a personal recording. Elvis's friend Guy Thomas Harris remembered that day. He said Elvis had just come back from the fair, and he told us he had stopped at Sun to record a song for his mom. We were all proud of him. Sam Phillips heard Elvis sing My Happiness, but he didn't think it was right for Sun Records. It wasn't country music, which was what Sun was known for. However, Phillips was curious and let Elvis come back to the studio with the bass player Bill Black and the guitarist Scotty Moore. They started jamming a song called That's All Right, giving it a new upbeat sound. When Phillips heard what they were doing, he knew he had something special. He quickly recorded the song and released it on July 19, 1954. The record was backed by Blue Moon of Kentucky, a country song that Elvis gave a new twist. Dewey Phillips, a popular DJ in Memphis, played That's All Right on his radio show, Red, Hot, and Blue. He played it 17 times in one night, and the response was incredible. People started buying the record, and Sam Phillips realized he had a hit on his hands. He signed Elvis to a 2-year contract, and Elvis's career took off. Elvis's success at Sun Records was a turning point. His friends in Memphis were thrilled, and his popularity grew quickly. He started performing at local shows, and his fans, especially the girls, couldn't get enough of him. Elvis's car, a pink Cadillac, became a symbol of his success. As Elvis's fame grew, he surrounded himself with a group of close friends, known as the Memphis Mafia. They were there to support him and help him with his new life as a superstar. George Klein, a friend from high school, was a key member of this group. He had worked with Dewey Phillips and was one of the first to hear Elvis's record. Klein said, "When I first heard Elvis's record, I was blown away. I knew he was going to be big. We were all in on it, and it was an exciting time." Elvis's music brought a new sound to the world, blending country, gospel, and pop. His impact on country music was huge, and he helped to nationalize a genre that had been mostly regional. Elvis's success at Sun Records was just the beginning of a legendary career that would change the face of music forever. George Klein landed a part-time job at Quem, stepping in for the morning jock who played rhythm and blues. He hit it off right away, getting 100 letters a day and catching the attention of Bill Grumbles from another station. Grumbles asked about his morning ratings, and Klein was surprised to find out he was number 2 in the morning. This success led to another job opportunity, and a significant boost for Elvis's career. Klein also hosted a popular show called The Rock and Roll Ballroom, where live performances and dancing attracted a lot of attention. Elvis would often come to see him, and they became good friends. However, Klein's radio job ended when the station decided rock and roll wouldn't last, and they fired him. Elvis, sensing his friend's need, offered him a job as his traveling companion. The role of a traveling companion was unique. Klein, along with Gene Smith and Arthur Hooten, had a job that, in less polite terms, was known as pimping. They would invite girls to meet Elvis, but Klein preferred to call it trolling. Sonny West, another member of Elvis's entourage, described how they would go out in their car, find attractive girls, and invite them to meet Elvis. These encounters were often consensual, and the girls knew what they were getting into. Over time, some of these connections turned into more serious relationships, like the one with a girl they met in Lake Tahoe. In Vegas, Sonny and the others would invite girls to the Hilton, where Elvis was performing. They would ask if the girls were with anyone, and if they weren't, they would invite them to meet Elvis. They would have a little party, and sometimes Elvis would pick a special girl to spend more time with. Despite his fame, there were times when Elvis didn't make a connection, but he was always respectful. Elvis's behavior with women was a mix of charm and respect. For example, when he worked with actress Shelley Fabares, he showed interest but respected her boundaries. Over time, as she got engaged and then married, he playfully noted her weakening but never pushed her. He valued the girls' choices and always made sure they felt comfortable. Elvis's generosity extended beyond his personal relationships. When Klein got married, Elvis wanted to be the best man, saying he would be offended if he wasn't allowed. He paid for the entire wedding and treated Klein's new wife to a stay at the Hilton. This kind of support and friendship was typical of Elvis, who was always there to help his friends. Klein and the other members of the Memphis Mafia were a tight-knit group. Unlike the traditional image of a mafia, they were regular guys who looked out for each other. They didn't engage in criminal activities. They were more like a support system for Elvis. Klein emphasized that they would go to Elvis for help with any problem, and he would always be there to solve it, whether it was a health issue or a personal matter. Elvis's life, however, had its challenges. His relationship with Priscilla, his wife, eventually fell apart. Klein was one of the first to know, and he was shocked. Priscilla grew up and they grew apart. The divorce was handled amicably, with Elvis giving Priscilla a significant amount of money and promising to remain friends. Despite the ups and downs, Klein always saw the best in Elvis. He described him as the most versatile, handsome, and charismatic person he knew. Elvis could sing in 5 different styles, from country and rock and roll to ballad, rhythm and blues and gospel. Klein believed that Elvis was one of the greatest entertainers the world has ever seen, and he wore a Hebrew letter, chai, around his neck, symbolizing life, alongside a cross. This showed that Elvis was open to different cultures and beliefs. Elvis's success brought him wealth, but he often spent it freely. His records and performances were incredibly popular, and he became a household name. Ed Sullivan's show, which featured Elvis, achieved a record audience of 55 million people, an astonishing 83% of the available audience. This kind of exposure helped Elvis cross the Mason-Dixon line and reach a national and international audience. Sam Phillips, who signed Elvis to Sun Records, eventually sold him to RCA for $40,000, a huge sum at the time. Although Phillips later regretted the deal, he had made a significant profit. The record business was changing, and RCA had the resources to sustain Elvis's growing career. For Klein, being part of Elvis's life was a great ride. He received material things, but more importantly, he gained a lifelong friendship with one of the most influential figures in music history. Clement really believed in the power of a name like Presley's. He thought Sam Phillips should have kept Elvis, but Phillips said, "Well, at least if you're going to make a mistake, you might as well have made a $12 million, perhaps $12 billion one." Elvis, however, didn't want to leave. Phillips admitted that Elvis would have been happy to stay, but a $40,000 deal made sure that didn't happen. For a while, Sam Phillips was as famous as Elvis. Clement said, "It was an exciting time at Sun Studios. They had incredible talent, and even when accidents happened, they turned out lucky." One of the luckiest nights was on December 4th, 1956, when Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, and Elvis Presley all jammed together. It became known as the night of the $1 Million Quartet. Carl Perkins was there to record with Jerry Lee Lewis and his brothers, Clayton and Jay, and the drummer W.S. Holland. The session was relaxed, and they just played around. Johnny Cash was in the building, heard the recording, and decided to join in. Then Elvis, who was now a huge star at RCA, showed up with his girlfriend, Marilyn Evans. He liked what he heard, and joined the jam session too. Clement turned on the recording equipment, and captured the whole thing. It was a historic moment, but no one thought to release it as a record right away. A photographer from the Memphis Press-Scimitar took pictures, and the next day, the newspaper ran an article about the $1 Million Quartet. The tapes just sat around until they were bootlegged, and eventually released on RCA. In 1969, Sam Phillips sold Sun Records to Shelby Singleton, who found the quartet tapes. The first album was released in Europe in 1980, but it took until 1990 for RCA to release their version. More tapes were discovered in 1987, and released as a special 50th anniversary album in 2006. Elvis's success led to the growth of the Memphis Mafia, a group of close friends and associates who were part of his inner circle. Sonny West, one of the Mafia's stalwarts, was proud to be awarded the TCB badge by Elvis. TCB stood for taking care of business, but it also had a secret meaning. It was a code to signal that Elvis was doing something naughty, like being with a girl he shouldn't be. Sonny was one of Elvis's bodyguards and remembers the wild times they had, especially in Los Angeles and Palm Springs. Elvis's popularity was immense. He could walk on stage and make his fans ecstatic just by being there. His performances were like religious experiences for his fans. A lot of the credit and blame for Elvis's career is attributed to Colonel Tom Parker, his manager. Parker wasn't a real colonel, or even legally named Parker. He was born Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk in the Netherlands, and came to the U.S. illegally. He got his colonel title from Louisiana Governor Jimmy Davis for helping with his election campaign. Parker was a controversial figure. Some people hated him, but others, like Sonny West, liked him. Parker managed other big stars before Elvis, and knew how to make money. He took a larger commission than the usual 10%, and was known for his shrewd business sense. Sam Thompson, another bodyguard, described Parker as a complex man who had his ups and downs with Elvis. Despite their differences, Parker was respected for what he did for Elvis's career. Elvis's generosity was legendary. Fred Frederick remembered a time when Elvis saw a woman admiring a Cadillac in a showroom. He asked if she wanted one, and when she said yes, he bought it for her. She was a complete stranger, and they never met again. This kind of generosity was typical of Elvis, and it's a memory that his friends cherish. Elvis's success brought success to those around him, and the stories of his kindness and generosity are a big part of his legacy. The $1 Million Quartet and the Memphis Mafia are just a few of the many fascinating aspects of Elvis Presley's story. Gene Bradbury often talked about Elvis Presley's generosity, especially towards their classmate George Klein. George was a recipient of Elvis's kindness, including receiving multiple cars. Gene recalled, "Elvis gave George loads of cars. George and I used to ride together to Memphis State University. George was given a Cadillac convertible, but his mom was so strict that she didn't want him to have it. Elvis, however, wouldn't hear of it. He knew who was genuine." Gene added, "Elvis was a damned good guy to know." Elvis's generosity was well known, but it also made him vulnerable to those who tried to take advantage. Gene said, "I'm sure he was taken advantage of. He was so sharing and giving. I am sure he gave away more than he kept." Despite the challenges, Elvis's success was undeniable. In March 1956, he bought a green ranch-style bungalow on Audubon Drive for $29,000, a fortune at the time when the average Memphis house cost only $6,000. This house was a symbol of his success, a result of his hit Heartbreak Hotel. Mike Freeman, who sold the house, noted, "In March 1957, he was the most famous 22-year-old in the world." The house on Audubon Drive was a place where Elvis and his parents enjoyed a brief period of normalcy. Gene Bradbury remembered, "Middle-class kids used to come here and go to Elvis's first bedroom. Elvis built a brick and iron fence with musical notes engraved on it, but people still peeked through the windows. His mother, Gladys, would hang out the wash, and the curious onlookers would disappear." However, the fame that brought Elvis so much success also robbed him of his privacy. The lack of privacy made Elvis and his parents think about their future. They decided to move to a new house, Graceland, where they could have a stone wall built around it for privacy and security. Graceland was a grand Southern-style mansion, a place that seemed to belong in a different era. It was big and elegant, allowing Elvis to realize all his fantasies. His mother, Gladys, wasn't as happy there. She missed the friends and the community she had in their previous home. Fred Frederick, a close friend, said, "Elvis was such a family man and loved his mother so much." Despite this, Elvis needed a home that could accommodate his fame. Graceland quickly became a symbol of Elvis's success. It was where he lived and where he died. The house was a combination of elegance and extravagance, with 17,000 square feet of living space. It was a far cry from the two-room house in Tupelo, where Elvis was born. Kevin Kern, a guide at Graceland, described it as a unique historic home, a rags-to-riches story. Elvis's friends, the Memphis Mafia, often visited Graceland. Guy Thomas Harris, a longtime friend, recalled, "He was as hospitable as he was in Tupelo. Gladys told us, 'Just tell the cook what you want to eat and you'll have it.'" Harris also remembered Elvis's fashion choices. Sometimes he wore fancy clothes, but for football he wore jeans. Graceland was not just a home, it was a palace. Elvis was the king, and his friends were his court. The house became a tourist attraction, something Elvis hadn't planned. Kern explained, when he bought Graceland, it was on a farm of 600 acres. They sold him 13 acres, The surrounding land was sold off to developers, and he soon had neighbors peeking at him again. In 1958, Elvis's life took another turn when he was drafted into the Army. Jack Clement, a DJ friend, recalled, "I was the first person he told that he was going in the Army. I told him about the Marine Corps and said it was the best thing I'd ever done. After I told him, he seemed happier with the idea." Elvis joined the Army as a normal soldier, earning a soldier's income and doing a soldier's job. His time in the Army was a smart move for public relations. Every photo of him in uniform boosted his image. It was also his first trip outside the United States to Germany, which added to his legend. Elvis's time in the Army was marked by personal tragedy. When his mother, Gladys, died, he was given permission to come home. Fred Frederick remembered. He wept, of course. He was very normal, and anyone who loves his mother is all right by me. Elvis's service in the Army added to his legend, showing his commitment to his country. Even Sonny West, a member of the Memphis Mafia, acknowledged Elvis's impeccable behavior during his time in the service. Graceland, the mansion that symbolized his success, remained a constant in his life, a place where he could be both king and family man. West remembers Elvis after his military service. He says, after he had done his service, he was more respected. He'd been made a buck sergeant in 2 years. He was a regular guy. He asked for no special favors. He could have asked for special treatment, but he never did. In the late 1950s, being a regular guy was the best a man could hope for. This attitude made a lasting impression on the Defense Department. Throughout Elvis's 2 years of service, they kept sending out stories and pictures of him. Elvis accepted this with more calm than excitement. As a loyal American, he agreed that he could help the country. His manager, Parker, also believed that all the publicity was good for selling records. During Elvis's service, Parker saved up a bunch of songs to release bit by bit, keeping Elvis's name and music popular. The fans never forgot Elvis and counted the days until he returned, maybe even more eagerly than Elvis himself. Army service allowed Elvis to make friends. Some soldiers were jealous, but on the surface, Elvis was just one of the boys. He didn't complain about the food in the mess hall, even though it wasn't as good as the meals from his cook at Graceland. He wouldn't eat alone even though he could have. Instead, he had his own house to go to at night, which was safer and more comfortable. One of Elvis's closest friends from the Army was Joe Esposito. Joe was from Chicago and was drafted at the same time as Elvis. They met in Germany and became fast friends. Joe remembers, Elvis came up to me and introduced himself, even though everyone knew who he was. He asked me to play on his football team. We chatted, and he invited me to see him again. There was something about his eyes and smile. I knew we would be friends. Elvis was a patriotic man who loved the United States. After basic training, the Army offered him special service to entertain the troops, but he wanted to be a regular soldier. He did his 2 years like everyone else, facing the cold, snow, and rain. He trained as a tank driver and later became a reconnaissance driver, driving a jeep in front of the tanks. Elvis also made other friends in the Army, like Charlie Hodge and Rex Mansfield. Joe Esposito remembers that Elvis was good at picking his friends. Some officers tried to be tough, while others tried to be nice to him, but most liked him. When you met Elvis, you couldn't help but like him. After the Army, Elvis's image changed. Parents who once thought he was too sexual began to like him. Joe Esposito became Elvis's right-hand man, organizing his tours and managing the guys around him. He left his family to work for Elvis, a commitment he took joyfully. Graceland, Elvis's home, wasn't a place of wild parties. His secretary, Becky Yancey, says, "It's a misconception that they had wild parties at Graceland. His grandmother and aunt lived there." The group of friends around Elvis became known as the Memphis Mafia. Joe Esposito was sometimes called the godfather of the Mafia. The press gave them this name because they dressed up and arrived in limousines, making Elvis look like a Hollywood star. Joe says Elvis was the real godfather. He helped people with their problems, but he never talked about his own. Despite being from Chicago, Joe fit in with the Memphis Mafia. They welcomed him once they got to know him. Graceland was Elvis's home, and he was involved in designing it. He chose the chandeliers, curtains, and furniture. The house was comfortable for him, with a 15-foot couch, blue curtains, and white wallpaper. The custodians of Graceland rotate the furniture to keep it interesting for regular visitors. Today, only the ground floor of Graceland is open to the public. Visitors can see the dining room with its mirrored walls and French doors, and Gladys's bedroom with its purple bed. Security was a big concern, especially for Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie. The house was always bustling with activity, with cooks, the Memphis Mafia, garden staff, and security on duty 24/7. Elvis's fame made it hard for him to live a normal life. He often became secluded, and his friends helped him feel safe. The jungle room, originally called the Den, was a special place for Elvis. It had a Hawaiian feel, and was used as a recording studio. Elvis recorded 3 LP there, including his last one, Moody Blue. He felt safe and comfortable recording at home, away from the pressures of the studio. Elvis's life was a mix of fame, friendship, and the struggle to stay true to himself. Graceland, his beloved home, remains a place where fans can feel close to the king of rock and roll. Elvis Presley's recording process was often just as unique as his music. In the jungle room and the Den at Graceland, there were rarely any production problems. Elvis didn't like to rehearse much. He preferred to just do his own thing. He knew when it was right. There was no producer calling the shots. Elvis would stand at the microphone, joke around, and sometimes stop and start over. He was in control, and sessions often began late at night. Graceland was his sanctuary, where he could be both Elvis the star and Elvis the dad. One of the most striking features of Graceland is the room filled with his gold and platinum records. It's like an atrium with records instead of trees, covering 2 stories high. The hits seem to have grown like trees, each one a testament to his enduring popularity. Here you can see every gold, every platinum, and every single that deserved a precious metal pressing, with its sleeve on display. It's a visual representation of his incredible success. There are surprises in this room. For instance, Good Rockin' Tonight, a record from Elvis's early days at Sun in 1954, only went gold a few years ago. Elvis still sells, especially around his birthday, and he still receives awards, many of which are posthumous. The room is also filled with his iconic jumpsuits, which became more elaborate over the years. The designers would sketch out ideas and show them to Elvis, who would approve or suggest changes. These outfits, weighing up to 45 to 50 pounds, were heavy and contributed to his sweating during performances, though his bodyguard, Kevin Kern, insisted that Elvis gave a great show no matter what. The merchandise at Graceland is carefully curated to maintain Elvis's image. The team in charge of his name, image, and likeness worldwide ensures that everything from T-shirts to greetings cards, watches, wrapping paper, and calendars respects his legacy. They have over 65,000 images of Elvis Presley, all part of the Graceland experience. Elvis's home life at Graceland was a mix of quiet and chaos. He loved horses, which he got into with Priscilla. The fields where the horses roamed were a peaceful escape from the busy life of films and touring. Fans loved to watch the horses, and Elvis would sometimes let people take pictures at the front door if he wasn't there. Despite his fame, he was aware of the world around him, and always made sure to take care of the people in his life. Sam Thompson, Elvis's bodyguard, entered his life in June 1973. Sam had worked at the county jail as a guard and sheriff's deputy. Elvis would often call him late at night to go riding, and one day, Elvis bought Sam a house and a motorcycle to make it easier for him to come over. Sam's role was to protect Elvis from the fans, who sometimes mobbed him, pulling his hair and clothes. His job was to get Elvis in and out of venues safely, and to protect the fans as well. He used decoys and back staircases to avoid confrontations. Elvis's relationship with Linda Thompson began in 1972. Linda, who was Miss Tennessee Universe, met Elvis at the Memphian Theater after midnight. Despite her initial reservations, she found Elvis to be down to earth and kind. They quickly became close, and Elvis invited her to meet his father. Their relationship was unique, with Linda sometimes being maternal and Elvis being paternal. They were brother and sister sometimes, lovers sometimes, and friends always. Linda knew that Elvis wasn't always the most faithful lover, but she tried to understand his needs. The first year of their relationship was intense, with Linda accompanying Elvis everywhere, even to the dentist. Despite the challenges, she adored him, and was happy to be by his side most of the time. Their relationship was a complex mix of love, loyalty, and the pressures of fame. Graceland is a piece of pop culture and music history, where fans can see and feel the legacy of Elvis Presley. The guided tours, available in 8 languages, provide a glimpse into the life of one of the most iconic figures in American music. From the gold records to the elaborate jumpsuits, every detail tells a story of a man who left an indelible mark on the world. Linda and Elvis's story is one of love, laughter, and the complexities of fame. Linda, a beautiful and strong woman, found herself in a relationship with one of the most famous men in the world, Elvis Presley. She saw both the public and private sides of Elvis, and their relationship was far from ordinary. Linda often watched Elvis enjoy simple pleasures, like British comedy on TV. He loved Monty Python and could recite the lines by heart. His sense of humor was infectious, and he had a soft spot for spiritual books and karate. He even dreamed of starring in a karate movie, though his manager, Colonel Parker, likely wouldn't have approved. Elvis's relationship with his daughter, Lisa Marie, was tender and loving. Linda took care of Lisa Marie when she was with them, and they had fun together. Despite the challenges, Linda felt very loved and respected by Elvis. She remembered his tears when he said he loved her, his sensitivity, and his kindness, but there were darker moments too. Elvis's temper could flare up, and one scary incident involved him shooting a television set with a gun. Linda was in the bathroom when a bullet narrowly missed her. It was a shocking moment, but it also highlighted Elvis's impulsive nature and his struggle with controlling his emotions. As time went on, Elvis's health became a serious concern. He was heavily dependent on prescription drugs, and it was a struggle for him to admit he needed help. Linda tried to support him, but it was exhausting. She knew she couldn't stay and watch him self-destruct. In 1976, she made the difficult decision to leave Graceland. She didn't want to be the one to find him dead one day, and she loved him too much to stand by and watch him suffer. Linda's brother, Sam, was part of Elvis's security team, and he saw the toll the constant touring and fame took on everyone around Elvis. Despite the challenges, Sam remained loyal and tried to support Elvis in any way he could. He remembered the good times and the fun they had, but he also acknowledged the struggles. In the end, Linda and Elvis's relationship was a mix of love, laughter, and the harsh realities of life in the spotlight. Linda's decision to leave was heart-wrenching, but it was a choice she had to make for her own well-being. Elvis's story is a reminder of the price of fame and the importance of taking care of oneself, even when it means saying goodbye to someone you love.